My name is Tayana. I would like to ask you questions about the DC riots in 1968.
Okay.
What is your background, such as your age,
Well, I'm 67 years old. Just turned it on Sunday. Hallelujah.
up upbringing?
My upbringing. Well, I'm a native Washingtonian, first off. Been living here all my life. I come from a large family. We have lived in the southeast area of D.C., Washington, D.C., the majority of our life. What else you like to know?
Years in the city.
I'm a native Washingtonian, meaning I've been here all my life. 67 years.
Family dynamics.
Well, I come from a large family, a tight knit family, and so when I say large, I mean a family of 16 of us.
Economic and educational background.
Well, I graduated from Frank W. Blue High School. I attended many technical schools, did a lot of on-job training, education on my job at agriculture. I did that for like 37 years. Been working for about 42 years before I retired. I am retired right now, thank God. Um,
Where were you when the riots began?
well, I was right here in Washington, D.C. when the riots began. I believe we were at home, and then we heard about how Martin Luther King had died, and then everybody got, well, they was kind of shocked, and then they were sad, and then they were angry, then they were bitter, and
Okay, what was your initial reaction to the riots and those of your family slash larger community?
well, like I said earlier, people first were shocked. They couldn't believe it. And then once they really found out that it was true, people got angry, they got upset, they got bitter, and then they got out of control because then they started rioting and looting. My family members were not part of it.
How do you experience the riots?
Well, like I said, it was a lot of fear. Once the anger and the bitterness went, and then it was fear because then you had the police out there, then the FBI, and So growing up in a black community in the ghetto, we had a curfew, so you really couldn't go out late at night. Actually, when it got dark outside and towards the evening, twilight time, you just had to be in the house.
How were you directly impacted by the riots?
Well, directly impacted because they had destroyed so many stores and things, supermarkets, and where we all shopped and everything. It hit our area really hard. So sometimes you had to wonder whether or not you had any food or when the stores were going to open back up and what stores were affected. So it did impact you then because you were limited to when you can go outside and what you could do in your own neighborhood, and you definitely couldn't go outside your own neighborhood without being stopped and questioned and maybe sometimes locked up for no reason.
Okay, how are you indirectly impacted by the riots?
Well, I say indirectly because you knew what was going on. It wasn't right there in my particular neighborhood, so it was in surrounding neighborhoods. And so indirectly meaning that you couldn't even get to those places, and then you didn't even know how the supplies was going to get into your community.
How did you feel about the government's response to the riots, city or federal?
Well, the city government's response, I guess, response mostly was to get the looters, get the rioters, and bring the crowd under control. But at the same time, whatever force they wanted to use or could use, they did use. Some was abusive, but then some were understanding. The federal government as a whole, of course, they did what they could do. They bring in like the National Guards, the stand guard, and everything like that. So you really kind of walk around kind of secure, but then at the same time kind of afraid.
Okay, so how did the riots change the city?
Oh, it really changed the city. It had a great impact on the city in a negative way, I should say, because, like I said, majority of our merchandise, like the stores that we shop at, Morton's and all those stores, the grocery stores and things were hit. Um, Vehicles broken in, windows broken, so you really didn't know where the next source of income was coming from. Some people couldn't even go to work, couldn't go to school. You definitely couldn't go out. So if you had a night job, you definitely couldn't go to work at night. So we didn't know how things were going to get back into our community and how things were going to get back. We knew it was not going to never be the same, but still, you were living day by day trying to figure out what was going to be next.
Okay, how do you think your quality of life and your economic and educational opportunity changed as a result of the riots?
Well, my economic and quality of life, I can say the riots didn't really have a direct impact on me because I still continued school. I graduated. I went on to further my education. I got a job and I kept on living and moving on. And actually, I did well with myself. I thank God for that.
How do you think the riots? How do you think the riots are portrayed in modern day?
Well, I think the riots are portrayed as, well, if we look at today's modern riots, sometimes they can associate the riots with terrorism. And so, in the face of the government, it still is an abomination. So they still go after you for a riot. So riots are still not healthy things. There's better ways to get answers to the situations and circumstances. And a riot really only hurts the community that you live in because it's always directed at the community in which you live in, which I don't think really accomplished much, but just sets us back.
Do you think enough people my age know about the riots and their impact? And if not, do you think we should know more? Why or why not?
No, I don't think the children your age do know much about the riots. And if we start talking about it, you'll look at us like, what y'all talking about? We could be speaking foreign language to you. But because of the news media, you also see protesting. Now, there's a difference between the protesting and rioting. Rioting gets a little more violent, where protesting can be a non-violent protest. So you see that on TV, and some of the children nowadays are impacted by it because protesting can turn violent, and not necessarily a riot, but violent. Riot destroys property and destroys the community and destroys your way of life, your quality of life. So I think to understand the impact of rioting and how we got to where we are now, I believe children your age should be aware and taught and to understand what rioting all right so that it can be prevented today and in the future.
How did the riot affect your life?
Um, well, I'm gonna say how it affected my life. It didn't affect my life too much because, like I said, it wasn't in my particular community. Even though I lived in, let's say the project, but it didn't come into my particular community where anything in there was affected. Now, on the outskirts, there were stores that were impacted, and like I said, you didn't know whether or not you was gonna have any food to eat for the rest of the week because stores were shut down. But it also taught us how that we can get answers to things without going through a violent means. So to me, it didn't have a great impact on my life, and it didn't have a negative impact on my life, but it made me to see things clearer and know that you can negotiate and make arrangements for things and do things in such a peaceful manner where you don't cause harm to yourself. Rioting cause harm to the people in which the area is being rioted. So I just believe that there's other ways like protesting and praying, most of all, that will also help to solve the problems of the community.
Did you participate or any family member participate in the riot?
No, no one in my family participated in riot. Actually, we stayed away. Our parents did not allow us to go in that neighborhood whatsoever. So we were instructed and we were obedient and we stayed away from the riots.
Do you think anything could have been avoided during the riot?
I think a lot of things could have been avoided. I think the communication was the main problem, and the mindset. And so, because people had been oppressed so long, so long, so long, this was just one way for them to escape and get a lot of that stuff up out of their system. But I believe if they still had leaders, even though Martin Luther King was assassinated, that was another hit and insult to the black community. But I believe if we had speakers that would speak up and say, look, there's a better way. We have suffered a great loss through Martin Luther King, but there's a better way to have a better life, and he fought for us to have a better life. So I think if they had brought a clear understanding and could have gotten to people into the community more so than bringing in force that didn't really understand what was going on. And so I don't know how else they could have changed it, but That's my view on it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.